Have you ever looked out into the warm, velvety darkness of a summer night and watched a firefly drift through the heavy air? For many of us, that gentle, rhythmic pulse of bioluminescence is a symbol of innocence, a tiny spark of natural magic dancing in the twilight. It brings back childhood memories of chasing glowing insects across manicured lawns. But what if I told you that in some parts of the world, that soft glowing light is not a sign of magic, but a harbinger of absolute, inescapable terror? Imagine lying in your bed, the tropical night pressing heavy and humid against the walls of your home. You have locked the heavy wooden doors. You have shuttered the windows against the wind. You feel perfectly safe within your sanctuary. But then, a single glowing speck slips effortlessly through the narrow tunnel of your keyhole. It hovers in the silence of your room. It watches you breathe. And then, it descends. You are about to be visited by the Adze. Welcome to the dark beating heart of West African mythology. Today, we are going deep into the folklore and the shadows of the Yu people of Togo and Ghana to uncover the chilling truth behind one of the most insidious, terrifying, and historically misunderstood vampiric entities in human history. Forget the aristocratic counts of European castles draped in velvet, and forget the romanticized immortals of modern cinema. The Adze is a predator of a fundamentally different breed. It is a shape-shifting, disease-carrying, blood-drinking spirit of pure malice, born from the deepest anxieties of the human condition and the harsh realities of the natural world. To truly understand the horror of the Adze, we must first strip away everything we think we know about traditional vampires. The Adze does not lurk in crumbling graveyards, nor does it sleep the daylight hours away in a coffin filled with native soil. In its primary, wild form, the Adze exists as an insect. Most commonly, it takes the shape of a firefly, though harrowing stories sometimes describe it as a beetle, a mosquito, or simply an unnerving, disembodied ball of phosphorescent light drifting silently through the night sky. This choice of form is a masterstroke of predatory evolution within the realm of folklore. By masquerading as a common, ubiquitous insect, the Adze weaponizes the natural environment against humanity. The terror lies in the absolute uncertainty. Is that just a harmless bug tapping against the window pane, drawn to the lantern light? Or is it a demonic entity waiting with infinite patience for you to close your eyes? As a tiny, luminous insect, the Adze possesses an uncanny spatial mobility that renders all traditional human defenses utterly useless. Human architecture offers absolutely no barrier. The Adze can slip under the tightest door frames, navigate through microscopic cracks in dried mud brick walls, and glide effortlessly through the hollow chambers of a locked door. Once inside the home, it seeks out the sleeping, defenseless inhabitants. It lands softly on their exposed skin and begins its dark, parasitic work. The Adze drinks the blood of its victims while they slumber, leaving no immediate, gruesome physical wounds, but inflicting a far more devastating and systemic toll upon the body. Those who are fed upon by the Adze do not wake up with 2 neat puncture marks on their neck. Instead, they wake up drained of their vital essence. They fall victim to sudden, violent, and seemingly inexplicable illnesses. They suffer from progressive weakness, terrifying cyclical fevers, and chronic, bone-deep fatigue. And while the Adze will prey upon men and women of any age, it possesses a deeply tragic dietary preference. It overwhelmingly favors the pure, untainted blood of innocent children and infants. The creature is universally recognized as a relentless hunter of the young, leaving a wake of unspeakable grief and empty cradles in its path. But human blood is not its only sustenance. In a strange and fascinating twist of mythological ecology, the Adze is also fiercely drawn to the vital agricultural resources of the community. It has a voracious, supernatural appetite for palm oil and the hydrating water of coconuts. An active Adze, driven by its endless thirst, can systematically drain an entire village's supply of these life-sustaining liquids in the dead of night. In the traditional agrarian societies of West Africa, where these natural resources are absolutely crucial for daily survival, cooking, and local trade, the Adze transforms from a mere bodily threat into a terrifying agent of economic ruin and communal starvation. The horror deepens if the Adze is somehow denied its preferred diet, if the creature is prevented from feeding on children or accessing the village's stores of oil and water. It does not simply fly away to seek easier hunting grounds. Instead, it descends into a ravenous, uncontrollable frenzy. In this state of maniacal hunger, the spirit becomes exponentially more dangerous and erratic. Its bite becomes hyperlethal, and even those strong or lucky enough to survive the initial blood loss will inevitably succumb to the deadly, wasting diseases the frenzied Adze leaves behind in its toxic wake. To truly grasp why the legend of the Adze was born, we have to look past the supernatural narrative and examine the harsh biological realities of the West African coast. For centuries, the Yu people have inhabited the lush tropical regions of what is now modern-day Ghana and Togo. This is a land of breathtaking natural beauty, rich, complex cultures, and dense, vibrant ecosystems. But historically, it was also a landscape fraught with invisible, microscopic dangers that shaped the lives of everyone who lived there. Anthropologists, medical historians, and sociologists widely agree that the myth of the Adze did not originate in a cultural vacuum. It was a brilliant, desperate, pre-scientific attempt by a society to explain, codify, and warn against one of the greatest, most relentless killers in human history, the devastating plague of malaria. Imagine for a moment living in a society before the invention of the microscope, before the groundbreaking discovery of germ theory, and before the widespread availability of anti-malarial drugs like quinine. Your community is periodically ravaged by invisible, unstoppable forces. Your friends and neighbors fall desperately sick with sudden, bone-rattling chills and burning fevers that consume their minds. Most tragically, the infant mortality rate spikes uncontrollably during certain seasons. You know instinctively that these deaths are somehow linked to the swarms of insects that breed in the stagnant waters and fill the thick night air with their high-pitched whining. But how do you explain the exact mechanism of this death? How do you conceptualize an enemy you cannot truly see, fight, or bargain with? You create the Adze. The parallels between the myth and the disease are mathematically precise. The Adze strikes exclusively at night, just as the disease carrying Anopheles mosquito does. It enters homes by infiltrating the smallest gaps in the architecture. It bites the sleeping victims, drawing their blood into itself. And the tragic aftermath of the Adze's attack, the wasting sickness, the chronic fatigue, the severe anemia, and the disproportionately high death rate among the young and vulnerable, is an exact clinical mirror of a severe malarial infection. By giving the disease a terrifying face, a specific name, and a set of supernatural behaviors, the Yu people created a vital cultural framework for understanding their collective trauma. The traditional belief that there is absolutely no defense against the Adze is a heartbreaking reflection of the historical reality. Against the relentless, seasonal tide of mosquito-borne plagues, traditional societies felt entirely powerless and subjected to the whims of nature. The monster was their way of saying, the night is inherently dangerous, the insects bring death, and the sickness they leave behind is a supernatural thief that steals our children in the dark. If the Adze were nothing more than a fantastical metaphor for a mosquito, it would be a fascinating footnote in medical anthropology. But the legend goes much deeper, twisting uncomfortably into the complex psychology of human relationships and social dynamics. In the highly organized cosmology of the Yu, the Adze is not merely a wild, unthinking beast of the forest. It is fundamentally tied to human malice. The Adze is, at its core, a form of destructive witchcraft. The term Adze refers not only to the glowing insect, but also to the human beings who are possessed by the spirit, and to the destructive magical force itself. To be possessed by an Adze is to become a witch, known in the U language as an abasm, and this dark possession is rarely a random occurrence. It is fueled by the darkest, most corrosive emotion in the human heart: jealousy. To understand this, we must look at the history of the U people. Their oral traditions speak of a mass migration to escape a brutal, despotic ruler named King Agor Akorli in the 17th century. Because of this historical trauma of living under a tyrant, the U rejected centralized, authoritarian kingships. Instead, they developed a decentralized society, favoring the collective wisdom of local elders and the intricate bonds of the extended family. In such a horizontally structured society, where people live in incredibly close proximity and rely heavily on one another for survival, secret resentments and unspoken envies act like a slow-acting poison in the communal well. The Adze myth serves as a strict, unforgiving mechanism of social control, a mirror reflecting the community's internal fractures and unspoken tensions. The spirit specifically targets those who harbor deep-seated jealousies, using their hidden resentment as an anchor to possess their souls. Once possessed, the human host becomes a living vessel for the Adze. The creature then directs its devastating nocturnal attacks not at random strangers, but precisely at the people the host secretly envies. Let us look closely at the demographics of suspicion. Who gets accused of being an Adze? The folklore points directly to the stress points of the social structure. In a patriarchal society where a woman's status is often tied to her reproductive success, a woman who struggles with infertility might be heavily suspected if the children of her husband's other wives are thriving. A desperately poor man who casts a longing eye at the sprawling farm of his wealthy neighbor might face terrifying accusations if that neighbor's crops suddenly wither or his livestock inexplicably dies. Consider the complex, sometimes fraught dynamics of the extended family unit. In U culture, a woman with brothers might fall under intense whispering suspicion if her brother's children are robust, healthy, and successful, while her own children suffer from illness or perish prematurely. The myth ruthlessly suggests that her maternal envy summons the Adze to balance the scales of fate through supernatural murder. Even the elderly, who are normally afforded great respect, are not safe from the paranoia. In a society grappling with high infant mortality, a deeply unsettling demographic anomaly can occur. The young die off rapidly, while the old continue to live on seemingly untouched. To the grieving parents, this feels profoundly unnatural and unjust. The Adze myth provides a chilling, actionable explanation. The elderly person is secretly an Adze, unnaturally prolonging their own life by draining the vital energy from the youth of the village. In this way, the Adze is the ultimate horrifying manifestation of the evil eye. It is the physical embodiment of the idea that someone else's success is a direct existential threat to your own happiness. The monster serves as a perpetual warning to the entire community. Do not boast loudly of your wealth, do not flaunt your healthy children, and above all, do not let jealousy take root in your heart, for it will surely invite the Firefly in. What happens when the invisible becomes visible? What happens when you manage to catch a ghost? The folklore states that the Adze is virtually impossible to catch while it is operating in its insect form. It is too small, too fast, too elusive, and too perfectly camouflaged against the backdrop of the night. However, if a brave or desperate individual manages to trap the glowing entity, perhaps by luring it into a sealed container, using its irresistible supernatural craving for palm oil and coconut water, the magical illusion immediately shatters. The exact moment the Adze is captured and its freedom is compromised, its innocent insectoid disguise collapses. The creature is forced into its secondary, quasi-human form, and this form is the stuff of absolute paralyzing nightmares. The captured Adze transforms into a grotesque, terrifyingly deformed humanoid figure. It is consistently described as being small in stature and severely hunchbacked, as if its spine has been twisted and warped by the sheer weight of its own malice. Its skin is a deep, unnatural jet black hue. Most terrifyingly, its hands end in long, razor-sharp talons, perfectly evolved for rending human flesh and tearing open the bodies of its victims. In some horrifying variations of the legend, the transformation is even more psychologically devastating. When the Firefly is trapped, it doesn't just turn into a generic, unrecognizable monster. It morphs into the exact physical likeness of the possessed human host. Imagine the sheer horror of capturing a glowing insect in your sick child's bedroom, only to watch it instantly mutate into the shape of your kindly next-door neighbor, your envious sister, or the quiet old man from the edge of the village. The unmasking of the Adze is the ultimate social betrayal, revealing that the monster destroying your life was hiding in plain sight, smiling at you every single day in the village square. It is only in this physical, humanoid form that the Adze becomes vulnerable. Stripped of its magical evasion and insectoid speed, the beast can finally be fought. The lore states that once forced into its humanoid shape, the Adze can be killed by physical means, often requiring overwhelming physical force, or a brutal, decisive strike to the head with a heavy weapon, such as an axe. But achieving this victory is incredibly rare. The creature, even when trapped, is astonishingly agile and violently defensive, making the attempt to catch and kill an Adze a potentially suicidal endeavor. As the centuries passed, the world changed rapidly, and the legend of the Adze changed with it. A myth is not a static artifact carved in stone. It is a living, breathing narrative that adapts to the shifting landscapes of human history and religion. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the coastal regions of West Africa experienced a profound, irreversible upheaval. European colonial powers arrived in force, and with them came armies of Christian missionaries seeking to convert the local populations. In 1906, a German missionary named Jakob Spieth published a monumental ethnographic study of the Yu people. He was the first European to formally document the legend of the Adze in writing. But Spieth, like many of his contemporaries, viewed African spirituality through a heavily biased, colonial lens. He stripped away the complex sociological nuances of the Adze. He ignored its critical role as an epidemiological warning system and a strict regulator of communal jealousy. Instead, he forced the Adze into the rigid binary box of European demonology, reducing it to a primitive, pejorative concept of black magic and witchcraft. As Christianity spread deeply throughout Togo and Ghana, the traditional Yu religion, known as Vodun, which simply translates to spirit, did not disappear. Instead, a powerful and complex syncretism occurred. The Yu people absorbed Christian theology, but fiercely retained their ancestral cosmologies and fears. In this new, merged spiritual landscape, the Adze underwent a massive transformation. It was no longer just a localized spirit of tropical disease or petty envy. It became directly synonymous with the biblical devil and his legions. This elevation to absolute, cosmic evil dramatically expanded the Adze's portfolio of terror. In the post-colonial, modern era, the Adze became the universal scapegoat for almost every conceivable human misfortune. Did you lose your job unexpectedly? It was the Adze. Are you suffering from clinical depression, described by the locals as a sudden, crushing weight of sadness? The Adze is draining your mind. Are you struggling with a debilitating addiction, experiencing a string of terrible financial luck, or facing an inexplicable crisis in your marriage? All of it, every modern anxiety and psychological trauma, is now attributed to the relentless spiritual attacks of the Adze. Because the perceived threat of the Adze evolved, the weapons used to fight it had to evolve as well. Today, the battle against the Adze has moved from the physical realm of catching fireflies in jars to the spiritual battlegrounds of modern religion. Throughout Ghana and Togo, charismatic and Pentecostal churches conduct massive, highly emotional, deliverance sessions. These sessions are intense, multi-hour spiritual warfare campaigns. Congregations gather in fervent, sweaty prayer, engaging in aggressive, dramatic exorcisms designed to purge the Adze from the bodies of the possessed and cleanse the community of hidden witches. The fear of the Adze is not a forgotten relic of the past. It is a vital, pulsating element of modern spiritual life, driving thousands of people to seek divine protection from the invisible forces that seek to ruin them. While the oldest, most pessimistic legends whisper that there is no true defense against the Adze, human beings refuse to go quietly into the night. Throughout history, the Yu and their neighboring cultures have developed a rich, intricate arsenal of spiritual and physical countermeasures to keep the darkness at bay and protect their loved ones. Because the Adze exploits the architecture of the home, the first line of defense is often physical and practical. Villagers historically employed tightly woven thatch and meticulously sealed every microscopic crack in their mud brick walls. Fine mesh screens and netting were carefully draped over sleeping areas, serving a brilliant dual purpose. They kept out the physical mosquitoes carrying malaria and symbolically barred the entry of the supernatural Firefly. Some traditions even advise keeping a low, glowing ember or a dim lantern burning in the sleeping quarters, under the belief that ambient light disrupts the bioluminescent navigation of the spirit. Lines of ash or protective powders are sometimes poured across thresholds and windowsills to create an invisible, impassable barrier. But physical barriers are rarely enough against a magical foe fueled by human malice. The people turn to the Zutovo, highly specialized ritual experts and makers of charms. These specialists craft Zato-powerful physical objects, most commonly intricate strings of consecrated beads, designed to project an invisible, impenetrable shield of personal protection around the wearer. To wear the Zo is to wrap yourself in spiritual armor, deflecting the envious gaze of the witch before it can summon the Adze. Protection is also woven into the very fabric of the culture through the use of sacred geometry. The Akan and Yu people utilize Adinkra symbols, ancient, powerful pictograms stamped onto clothing, carved into wooden furniture, and painted onto the walls of homes, each carrying profound philosophical and protective power. To combat entities like the Adze, one might invoke the Geinyami, a beautiful asymmetrical spiral that translates to "except God." It symbolizes the ultimate supremacy and eternal presence of the divine over all lesser malevolent spirits. To promote the harmony of the home and neutralize the toxic jealousy that feeds the Adze, families might proudly display the Eben, a symbol shaped like a fence, representing safety, love, and a secure perimeter that separates the sanctity of the family from external spiritual threats. Or they might rely on the Dwenemen, the ram's horns, a symbol demanding both fierce, uncompromising strength in the face of evil and profound humility before the gods. By surrounding themselves with these powerful visual symbols, performing the correct ancestral rituals, and relying on the intense prayers of the modern church, the people of West Africa continue their eternal, uncompromising vigilance against the monster in the night. The legend of the Adze is a masterpiece of mythological horror and a profound reflection of the human experience. It is a creature born from the deadly, fever-inducing sting of the mosquito, nourished by the bitter, corrosive jealousy of neighbors, and weaponized by the shifting tides of religion and colonial history. It reminds us, in the starkest terms possible, that the monsters we create in our stories are always reflections of the things we fear the most in our waking lives. The Adze is the primal fear of sudden, inexplicable illness. It is the heart-wrenching fear of losing a child to the night. It is the terrifying realization that the people we smile at every day, the people we share our meals and our lives with, might secretly harbor a resentment so deep it could destroy us from the inside out. So, the next time you are out in the dark and you see a tiny, glowing light bobbing towards you through the humid air, take a moment to pause. It is probably just a firefly, But as the people of West Africa have known for centuries, you can never truly be sure.